Oh, there she is. Hello, hello.
Hi,
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine. Okay. Yeah, so now I will say this. Mostly where we are, we we do what we can to care for our elders.
Okay.
But also in turn, for the most part, usually, except maybe in the past maybe 2 generations, the our elders in return, they also didn't really see the modern form of retirement as as a way of saying, okay, we need to just stop doing work and stuff. That was never a thing. It used to be, and they still do this in the rest of the world today. One didn't retire, so to say, until
Mhm.
um, you couldn't work at all anymore. You weren't able to, and then your
Sure.
kids took over. That's how it was. Basically, kids were seen as investment, and you didn't that and reliance on people, and also you didn't have the suburbia mentality, which I really think that's what caused a lot of complacency in the past 50, 70 years and so on, and all that. Anyway, there are plenty of now. My mom has worked in rest homes. Thankfully, she's not doing that anymore. She got tired of just staffing and just all that. There, she had to care for. They were caring for a man who was basically like a vegetable. He wouldn't. He couldn't communicate. He was just non-responsive, except for a few hints that he's probably communicating something here and there. And he was just yeah, like just existing. It was very sad. And yet he had a daughter, and they've had to call ambulance. There are ambulance that comes back and forth down our road because of the rest home that is near us. They've had to call them several times, the ambulance several times, and I know it's their job, but after a while it kind of gets tiring. Like, really, this is the life of this person here, um, to where. But the thing is, he doesn't have a DNR on him, although I think he should have,
What?
because
Hold on. What's a DNR? A what?
do not resuscitate.
You mean like if he's dying, you don't help him, kind of thing?
Well, only because he was in a. It's more of a. It helps to mitigate cases, and it's usually by a relative or those who are the state of attorney, which was his daughter. But his daughter, who doesn't even come to visit him, didn't come to visit him or see or talk with him, and yet she's like, I can't let go of my dad. Yet she don't do anything. She just wants to exist and to just keep existing. Not they have to keep changing him, changing his catheter and diapers and all of this stuff. And a lot of them, and he has this. He would often wonder, "Am I going to go to heaven yet?" I'm serious. There are some elders that are just purposely being left alive, but they are not given the quality life that they deserve
Okay.
because of selfish relatives that don't want anything to do with them, yet they're like, I want them alive. It's pretty selfish, isn't it? And eventually the man did die,
Okay.
even when they did. I mean, it's just, it's angering to me. It angered mom and the workers, especially because they're like, we have a lot of other people that need our priority, and we can't always be there for every single one of them. And then there was staffing and all that. So, and I'm not saying this, I'm not putting down the elderly at all. I actually respect them immensely. The problem is how their relatives treat them. Thankfully, because now our extended family, I grew up around 5 generations of relatives. So basically, I grew up knowing a great great grandmother, and I don't think a lot of people
Mhm.
experience that these days, except maybe here.
I did. I lived with my great grandmother for years.
Oh, I'm talking great.
Yeah, I know, but I think most people don't even know. Like, I don't think most people have lived with their great grandparents.
Oh, she lived across the yard from us.
Okay. So
Okay.
your argument is what exactly?
Well, the point is, there are some people who are elderly that don't have anyone at all. Either they lost their family to either tragedy, like some elders have seen their entire families die out, and they are the only survivors in parts of the world, and they're in a rest home. And if they are suffering, and I know that, to where they are being prolonged artificially, and yet they're like, can I just go home? And
Mm-hmm.
that home meaning they want to go to heaven, they want to get it over with. I'm saying that option probably isn't bad. Now, the coercion part is what you have to be concerned about. I think when you've lived, because in their mind, they've lived their life, they're
Mm-hmm.
done, they want to be in heaven. And basically, for me, it's the quality that these people are under, and if they're not appreciated, and and a lot of it has to do with the healthcare system as well.
I think,
And
yeah. Okay. I think a lot of it has to do with the lack of family structure in the United States.
it still exists, but let me tell you
Yeah.
something. There's never been such thing as the nuclear family. It's always been extended family.
Okay.
Growing up, the nuclear family was foreign to me. I was like, so you're telling me it's just mom, dad, kids, and that's it? And it's all them doing everything? Uh-uh.
Well,
There,
I agree with you. I agree with you
no
there.
man is an island. No family is an island. That's
I
how
agree with
communities stir them up. But you
right.
ask these suburbia people, and like, no, nobody's in charge of my kids except for me. And I'm like, so you won't accept help if you need it, like from a relative? Because I grew up I have the values. I grew up with the values of my great grandparents, which I'm very thankful for. And I thrived on it. I learned stuff that a lot of other people probably would take for granted. And it's, I don't want to say it's a privilege, but I think it's a right that everybody should have, because you
So
learn so much, and you really have that innate security, familiar security. Like, if something bad happens with me, or I have something to fall back on, so to
my
say.
right. So my great grandfather Frederick was on life support. And that was keeping him alive. He was he wasn't on life support. He was on oxygen, but he was very old and he was on oxygen and he really couldn't get out of bed. And one day he just pulled the oxygen mask off and died. He just wanted to end it. And I guess some people they're stuck in bed all day and they don't get out. They can't get out of bed and someone's cleaning their diapers and they're this and that and this and they just say, "You know what? Just kill me." And I guess I can understand where those people come from.
Now, I
At
know
the
not everybody's going to think that way, but if that's them, they want to do it. They want to. I think that should be made their decision, and they're
but the
absolutely certain about
Okay,
it.
okay. But the problem with that is when you do that, I think you kind of expand the Overton window. So
Well,
if
yes,
the
I do
old
know that.
yeah, so if the old woman or the old man wants to die and you say, "Well, we should give him that right because he's old and miserable," then what's stopping younger people from coming out and saying, "Well, I want to die too, so kill me." And then from there on, it can expand into other things that are destructive. It can expand to, well, these people are sort of they're drains on the system, so we should just euthanize them as well. And then you could have eugenics, and it's a very
Well, let me tell you
dangerous
something.
proposition.
In the olden, I would go back to natural law with this. You, when it comes to those who are in they're on like the stages of like life is going to end for them, but you're out. But then there's a prolonging of the life artificially, and it's not. It's just it's miserable to see, and also miserable for them to experience. But when you're talking about a young person that probably could have a comeback, I think that's different. And I know that there are people that will use another argument of like, no, they should have the right. No, a young person should be able to live. I think if we apply that like it would be way back when you didn't have the advances in technology like we did today.
Here's the issue is human life, I think, should be cherished no matter the age. When you start
absolutely.
When you start saying that young people are like when you start saying, I'm not saying that you're saying this, but when people start saying things like, well, young people are more important than old people because like they live their lives, then I don't know, maybe somebody in their 70s, maybe like someone in their 70s should be seen in the same way. And then we could say, well, that guy in his 70s, he's lived his life already. He only has like 10, maybe 20 years if he's lucky. So get rid of him as well. Like, I think that our principle in life should be the sanctity of human life, regardless of the age, because once we preserve the principle of the sanctity of human life, then we prevent these other evils from being acceptable or from being justified. So, for example, if you say, well, a woman is pregnant and she has an abortion, like when the embryo is just a little cluster of cells, right? Like you can't even see it. It's almost microscopic.
Yeah, there's a heartbeat.
Yeah, but it's like it's so small, right? Like it's so insignificant. People will say, well, what's more important, like this little cluster of cells or like a 13-year-old boy or something like that? And people will make these sorts of arguments. But I think that if we have the sanctity of human life as our principle, then we can prevent things like we can prevent ideas like partial birth abortion, because partial birth abortion is just basically.
And I never imagined that would be an idea. And honestly, a lot of this stuff is artificially being pressured on people and programmed into people to where even normies are tired. They don't want the trans stuff being taught in schools. Even the normie people don't even want it. So
I know. But I think that our principle should be the sanctity of human life. Just because someone is in a vegetative state doesn't mean that they should be killed. I don't think that that's a justification to kill them. So that's my position. Anyway,
the reason I've thought more about this is because if you haven't been hearing, DEFs, if you have a vehicle that is older than 2010, like a semi in it, they're not going to be used. The logistics stuff, ambulances aren't able to run. Hospitals are rationing products. Like, the way that we are seeing the logistics play out today, I say it's way worse. Even in the Great Depression, they didn't have logistics issues. It was more of like bad psycho weather in that one part of the country, and also the Wall Street people on Wall Street and how they gambled with their money. The average person didn't really have to suffer as much as some other stuff. I mean, there's a lot that you can go into this. But
maybe because, well, I don't know. I think.
Well, we need to drill again anyway. We need to drill again.
I agree, but I think humans. I think we've always been through like really bad situations. We've always had really bad situations that we've gone through.
Well, everything is interconnected. That's the problem. Things aren't separate like they used to be.
Right. That's true. But
it's gonna be worse. It's gonna be bad. And I want people to realize that we need to prepare for this and fight.
Do you think that we should prepare? But do you think that we should prepare for this by like killing people who are really old, or what?
Well, no.
Oh, okay. That's good.
I'm saying if it gets to a moral dilemma of like, and some people say this is an impossible situation. There's been surprising situations that people have been in during world time, and they're like, okay, do we kind of like, and I don't want to use this as an example, but if in Schindler's List before they came and they were going to kill these elderly, insane people. The doctors and nurses gave them something
Poison.
that was I think it was also more painless.
Yeah, it was poison.
So they kind of did it for them. I would say it's sort of, or maybe it would be the case of the nun in Constantinople when it was being raided in 1454, and she knew that if she was captured, she would be made into like a sex slave or a breeder for their cause. She took her own life in that case. Those are the kind of situations.
Samson also took his own life as well.
Who?
Samson in the Bible.
Samson? Wait a minute.
Yeah, he did. He was tied to 2 pillars, and he pulled the 2 pillars down and killed himself and killed everybody else in the temple of Dagon.
But wasn't he intoxicated?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
He was a prisoner of war. But again, those are different situations.
Well, I want people to I just think everybody, and we're kind of a spoiled people.
But this is what I'm trying to understand. Who are you going to kill? Like who do you want to kill? I'm trying to get what your point. I'm trying to understand your argument here. I'm trying to understand your conclusion. What's your conclusive thought? Who do you want to execute? Like elderly people or what?
Well, we should start with the child molesters and that have been proven guilty.
I'm not talking about child molesters. I'm talking about elderly folks. I agree with you on the child molester stuff.
Well, yeah, because you can't regulate rape and murder.
I mean, those people should be executed. Pedophiles and child rapists and all that.
Not only that, but if there's a proven case without a doubt, and there's no tampering of evidence and stuff.
Obviously.
Honestly, my argument is there needs to be better care for the people or palliative care, and if they're going to go, let them go in a way that is very painless, like purposely overdosing them with morphine with little time when it's their time to go, because that is actually what used to be. That's actually done to a degree in hospice care.
Yeah, I know that.
But it's not painful.
There's also a tremendous amount of abuse that happens in these elderly care centers, and I've heard of elderly people being killed because of neglect or because of overdosing. I think it's very barbaric. I don't think it's something that we should strive for.
Well, no, I don't want to either.
Okay. So what necessitates the killing of these people? Because I mean, what necessitates it? And what if they don't want to die? Like, what if they're super old but they don't want to die, or they've never really made that decision?
Well, I would say, honestly, if there's low and actually, I kind of didn't really want to talk about this, but I've already.
But that's why you called in, though, Heather. Heather, you called in for this reason.
But I wasn't arguing for killing. It was to mitigate certain issues that there are people that will say, we need to protect life at all costs, when that's impossible to do. You can't prolong life artificially too long. So
what about like Asian families that take care of the elderly until they die? Is that a problem?
Well, no, unless the government is basically making them work, and that's another issue. It's so sad. I actually don't shame anybody. Our own elders, including the matriarch of the family, she was cared for by her own family only until they couldn't be able to care for her anymore, and they had to start caring for themselves, or they were difficulty in their own issues. They had to put her in a rest home, but she was always visited.
I don't believe in rest homes. So my grandmother lives with me.
But it was a dire situation where they couldn't do it anymore. They did it for many years until they just couldn't.
Okay. I don't know exactly what that means, but
Well,
my
it was
my
her children were my great grandparents and great aunts and uncles, and they were in failing health as well. And
do you
so
think
on.
that there should be a limit to how long certain people live?
Well, that's what nature does, doesn't it?
I'm not talking about nature. I'm talking about what we as humans do deliberately to others. Like, do you think that we should say, okay, there's the limit. If this person's living beyond this age, then what? Like, just kill them or what?
No, I think
No.
it should be a case by case basis, depending on the health of the person. Will their chances of recovery, or just in general their quality of life, is it going to improve, or is it going to just drastically just stagnate? Just they're just existing, they're not doing anything, they can't communicate and stuff like that. It's at that point.
Heather, here's the problem with your argument is that here's the problem that I have with it. Unborn fetuses, unborn humans also can't talk. They also can't consent to anything. And because they're not able to consent, that has actually been the foundation for pretty much all pro-abortion arguments. That's why it's always the choice of the mother. What's the decision of the mother? And the unborn child, if an unborn child could speak, then we would have a much different situation. But the unborn child cannot speak, so it makes it much easier to justify abortion. Just like an elderly person who's very, very infirm cannot speak, and so it makes it much easier for us to justify what you're proposing. Do you see what I'm saying? So what you're proposing sets a very dangerous precedent, is what I would say.
Well, I'm not even here to completely argue for what you're assuming that I'm doing. I'm wanting people to think hard, like, what if you were in their shoes? That if people really mean what they go by and taking care of their elders, and especially also women who are pregnant, caring for them, making sure they have the best care possible, and for them to want to choose life, that is where we'll probably get somewhere as a society.
I don't really see the purpose of what you're proposing.
To get people to think more hard about why is it that there's to be thankful for life, and to not think of life as, oh, once I retire, I don't have to do anything. That's not true. You should keep
So
working.
what if somebody doesn't want to work anymore? They're just retired and that's it. They just rest.
Well, usually a lot of them end up dying because of that.
Okay, but what if they don't want to work though? What if they just want to play golf?
I hate to say this, but I think that's sort of complacent and kind of selfish. That's just my opinion, though.
So if you just should that be illegal, like just to retire and want to play golf, or what? I think maybe I don't know. Maybe yeah, that's something that old people like to do sometimes. They like to golf and play what's that, crochet or something.
Well, if you're still moving and doing stuff as far as working, I mean, let me tell you something. My great grandparents, when they retired, they still did things. I'm talking about people that take out a retirement and Social Security and they don't do anything but just sit on the couch and be lazy, and they don't do
Yes,
anything.
they've done enough work already. That's it. I mean, they've paid their Social Security. Plus, Social Security doesn't just come from the state. Like people, like
I know, but it's going to run out
pay
in
in
5
Social Security.
years. So
What?
to me, retirement is not in my future. To me, I'm going to work until I die. That's how I see life.
Okay, that's your decision though. But what if somebody just wants to sit down? Like they've earned their Social Security, they've paid
That's
enough
who I
money
feel
into it.
bad for, and they're gonna get into a situation where, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? I'm not gonna get any more money coming in. At what
Like,
point will you
for
do?
example, my grandmother is in her 80s and she gets Social Security and she doesn't do anything. She doesn't work. So what should happen to her? She just
Unless you
she
can't.
watches HGTV all day.
Well, if she's not able to do anything, that's different.
Yeah, but at one point she retired very early. I mean, not very early, but she retired in like what, her 70s, I think she retired. And she could still drive and she could still go to the store and move around. Should she be forced to be like a greeter at Walmart or something? Or do you want to force people to work their whole lives? Kind of like work will make you free, like that big sign in Auschwitz.
No. What I'm saying is, if you want to be able to have a good life, you may need to work yourself until you can't anymore, invest in your children, and see them as an actual investment, not as a way of, okay, I'm just going to bring them into a world and they'll just exist. No, you teach them and raise them properly. So, like they did in the past. And
Okay. I agree with you that they should see their children as an investment. I think that many times, the boomer generation has been very selfish.
okay, it's
They
not just that. It's a not even all the boomers are like this. It's actually hit or miss with some of them. It's a lot of the people in the suburban mentality, which around here is kind of rare. It's not that often. My grandfather still hasn't retired. He doesn't see him retiring. He's still going to move and do stuff. And because, well, that and Social Security. So,
okay. I think I agree that that people should have children and see them as an investment and invest in their children so that those children will take care of them once they get older. And I
and
think
not
that
only
this
that, but also,
yeah, go ahead.
but also for people that are, and this is why I consider myself pro. I mean, no, not pro. Far from it. Anti-abortion, because I don't like either the pro. I don't like the pro-life movement because they get into a territory where they say you will have this child, and they don't help the woman at all after
So
she has her
do you think
child.
that we should have abortion then?
No, what I'm saying is you help you help the other person. You, as
I
a church, as
agree
a
with you.
community,
I completely agree that we should help single mothers.
they still, shockingly, this is one of the reasons why in Europe they don't really have as many abortions like they do in the United States, because there is a culture of, hey, we need to take care of our own, and they do that, and
I
they
agree.
actually
I
invest
agree
in.
that we should. I agree that we should. There's plenty of programs in the U.S. still that help single moms. It's not like they're completely
I know,
helpless.
but
They have welfare programs that help single mothers as well.
the only downside is it's being. You probably won't believe me, but
It's
there have
being
been plenty.
abused, right?
What?
You're saying you're going to say it's being abused, the welfare system?
Oh, it has been plenty.
Okay, so how do we deal with this problem? Because if you're saying that we need you don't believe in abortion, fine, but you think that the woman should be taken care of, okay? But then you say it gets abused. So then how do we mitigate this whole quagmire?
It goes back to the churches and communities, not the
Okay,
government. That's the
sure.
deal.
I think that we should have definitely more of a sense of community. I think that we should definitely have more of a sense of family structure, which we lack. I know you don't agree with me completely on this, but we horrendously lack family structures in America. We 100%. It's if you don't agree with me, just literally look at Africa. Africa has almost zero elderly care centers. Do you know where the
Well,
only
yeah,
country?
because the kids care for them.
That's right. The only country in Africa that has elderly care centers is South Africa. And the reason why they have in South Africa is because they have a substantial white population there, and those are the people who have elderly care centers. It's a very Western thing. It's a very European thing to have elderly care centers. So if we could have a better family structure and take care of our elderly, and I don't know, if we have big enough backyards, we could build elderly in-law units or little
But
houses
also,
for the
if we're
elderly.
gonna, but also we don't want to crowd places to where there's lack of gardens. We need more gardens.
I agree with you, but an in-law unit isn't gonna. Okay, we're talking. Wait, hold on. We were talking about helping the elderly and having better family structures and more community, but now we're talking about gardens. But I agree with you that we do need more gardens. But that's a separate issue, though. I think, in a way, it's a separate issue, right?
Well, I say the agrarian lifestyle, which people in these kind of bubbles in suburbia have no idea as to how life actually works, and they think that, oh, you get your groceries here and the food doesn't come here, and
Yes, I know. I know.
so
Grandma, I just called you grandma. What the hell is wrong with me? Heather, my grandmother is 87 years old. We still take care of her.
well, that's good.
She has difficulty walking. She has difficulty getting up. My mother bathes her. No joke, bathes her. But the idea of killing my grandmother has never crossed my mind.
Well, first of all, we need to keep. If you really care about your elders, keep them out of the rest homes to the best of your ability.
I agree with you. And I think that's part of the problem is the elderly care centers. We just don't give a shit about elderly people.
Well, and also, I think, let me tell you something. Part of the problem with nursing is that there are too many women and there's a lot of henning.
Uh-huh.
And women are kind of, they can't always lift so much of a heavy weight like a guy can. If we equalize men and women percentage of males, it would actually help the system work better, and there's less henning and less drama. And because my mom she got tired of seeing that crap. I'm talking about efficiency here too. So
okay, I don't agree that we should kill elderly people, and I
don't either.
How about, I think we need more trad wives to help the elderly. We need more trad wives.
Well, not just trad wives. What about the husbands? It's their job too. It's not just the women doing everything. Both men and women do the work.
We need more trad husbands. Women need to stop marrying trash, though. They keep going with trash. They need to stop that.
Well, you help them realize where they're going wrong.
They go encourage them. Mexican ladies go with cholos, and white ladies go with white trash, trailer park trash. A little too much of that going on.
Let me tell you something, this is also a wider theory as to why we have these issues, and I do not think it's just generation. I don't think it's solely generation. It's the fact that ever since the Wilson years, that's when the government started becoming more encroaching on life, your taxes, everything. Cultural Marxism was infiltrated into institutions that started changing the teaching to where, and guess what? In the 30s, the average American wasn't aware of eugenics programs being done unless you were in high society or something, like Charles Lindbergh. People didn't know about this. My great-grandparents didn't know what was going on because they didn't get the same information you can get today. Now you have more and better opportunities and sources of what you can do with things than they did then.
But when you say that certain elderly folks should be killed,
and the wars, a lot of these wars that are frequent, yet they're not at our doorstep, but they're overseas. And the Vietnam War, we shouldn't have been there. We shouldn't have been in Iraq. We shouldn't have been in Afghanistan in the first place. And yet our guys and women come home broken people, and the military says, well, we're not going to help care for you. You're on your own. I mean, it's despicable. We have a lot of broken people today than we ever before. I'm not saying
we have a lot of dysfunction. Yes, we have a lot of emotionally.
But I also am bothered by the trad people that judge these people as like, well, you got to do it because because natural law says so. Well, you got to have some mercy on these people and help them.
I
They're
think
not going to do it alone.
I agree with you on that. Yes, I think we definitely need to have mercy on people who are unstable or who
And we
have.
got to do it. We got to take care of ourselves before we can take care of others. That's another
I agree
problem.
with you. I agree with you there too. We should take care of ourselves.
And also, I think the whole caring about people that are in our country, it's sort of like a false like
Mhm.
false caring, or like you're getting like ego points by saying, "Hey, look, I care for this person over here in this country," and yet you don't even bother in your own country. Kind of like what they do, like sending young kids to build in places in Africa, when a lot of the Africans do not like that because they're taking our jobs. It's
Who's
sort of like,
taking our jobs?
well, no, I'm saying that it's the way these humanitarian missions, that while it is good for people here to learn how to help people in need, there are people in Africa that see it as like a burden because there are people in their own country that can do those jobs, but yet it's being taken over by
I
some
think that
foreigner.
okay. Have you ever heard of an island called Icaria?
Picardia? I mean,
Icaria starts with an I. Icaria. It's in Greece.
maybe.
So there's a little island in Greece called Icaria, and it has some of the oldest people in the world. And you have people walking around in that island who are 97 years old, 93 years old, sometimes even 100 years old, or even a little bit more than that, 102, 103 years old. And they're still walking around and talking to people, and they're mentally very functional. And they say there's several reasons um, why elderly people in Icaria have a very good quality of life. And one, it's because
Their
there's
diet.
community. Well, it's yes, that's true. Diet does play a role.
They
But
probably don't stop moving too.
that's right. They walk around. Now they don't necessarily work, but they walk around.
Well, they do some work that's productive and like gardening. And again,
Sure.
that's the answer to a lot of this problems is you go back to the
Yes.
earth.
So they walk around a lot more. They stay healthier, and plus, they're never seen as a burden. But in the Western world, we see elderly people as a burden all the time. We see them as a nuisance all the time. And so we sort of disconnect them from community by putting them in elderly care centers. And it's in elderly care centers where I think a lot of them have mental atrophy, physical atrophy as well, and they start to lose their marbles. And then we say, "Oh, look, they're a burden, they're miserable, let's just kill them." So I think the source to a lot of this is just we lack a sense of community and family in America. I know you don't fully agree with me on that. But when
Well,
you
only
look at
because we don't really
Africa,
see it much here because we still have people that actually have those values. So, and those that still have those values, help those values spread. Make it, yeah. So,
but like for example, Middle Eastern culture, they don't have elderly care centers.
except maybe in Turkey,
Maybe in Turkey, but Turkey's kind of like Europe. But I'm talking
it's
like Jordan.
transnational.
What's that?
It's transcontinental.
Transcontinental. It's like halfway Middle East, halfway Europe. Um, but there's no elderly care centers in the West Bank. There's no elderly care centers in Jordan. Maybe they have them in Saudi Arabia, but in Jordan, West Bank, Syria, Lebanon, I think also they have more of a care for elderly people, and I think that is the root of the problem. Is that there's a lack of that compassion and care, lack of patience and things like that. So, I mean, I've been to hospitals where they have a lot of old people, old folks. Like for example, my grandfather was in a hospital uh, where he passed away, sadly. But while I was in that hospital, and there was a lot of old people living there, and not living there, but they were there as patients. But you can see how being stuck in a room on a bed every single day for weeks can just decay somebody. It can really break somebody down. My grandmother lives with us, so we're seeing her on a weekly basis. We don't visit her every day because she gets annoyed by that, but we see her on a weekly basis. And she still is, for her age, she still is pretty lively. Why? Because she has people around her talking to her,
Yeah.
things like that. So I think the root to a lot of these problems is the lack of
That's why
community.
a lot of the quarantining and stuff, and like kids, if you see your grandparents, you might kill them. And that was disturbing. That just, a lot of those protocols and the masking, you're reducing important social contact with other people. And honestly, I think that is a huge reason why there were suicides that went up. Not
Well,
just
I think
young people,
also
but
because Americans are I think Americans just weren't used to living in such isolation, so they just went
well,
crazy.
because we're social creatures. Most people aren't
Mhm,
isolated creatures. We're not an island. You
mhm,
have to, unless you are one of those few people that live like hermits and you're okay with it, that's fine, but that's not the majority.
mhm. Sure, sure. Well, there was also abuses that went on. For example, in New York, they were putting sick people, people with COVID, in the elderly care centers.
Yeah, and they were telling other people, you can't let your kids go out in the playground. And I'm like, wow, hip hop is the hypocrisy.
And yeah, well, they were putting sick people with COVID in elderly care centers, and that wiped out a lot of people. So I think, for
And
example,
the
in
government
Spain,
tried to cover it up.
yes, I think that in Spain, um, there was a story that took place in which somebody with COVID was in an elderly care center, and pretty much everybody died. I mean, pretty much all the elderly people in there died. So I can see why they wanted to isolate elderly people, because you're in a situation where if you don't isolate them and they get COVID, then everybody in the elderly care center dies. So that's a difficult predicament, I think.
I know, but it's despicable that they have this attitude towards children like, you better mask up or else you may kill your grandma or grandpa. That's awful. That's going to cause trauma to
Well,
those
you
kids.
may though, but you may kill grandma though. Like when I was
Yeah,
when
and
during the
how is
whole
that child going to grow up and they're thinking I killed grandma? How about, and it's like, and now they're wanting to say, okay, have your children under 5 take this vaccine that doesn't, I mean, for a disease that doesn't kill kids, it affects those with comorbidities and elderly. At some point, there are some things that, you know what, some things have to take the natural course so we don't hurt
so
other people's.
I okay. We're going back to the euthanasia thing, or like the survival of the fittest ideology. Um, yeah, I don't think that we should just allow old people to get infected and die. I don't agree with that.
No, I mean,
Since we both agree that we need a sense of community, we need a sense of collectivism. It takes a
well, no,
village.
community,
We
like true
should
community
protect.
with proper social justice, not the SJW crap. That's not real
I'm
social
not
justice.
talking. I'm not talking about SJWism, but I'm saying since we both agree, we can both agree that we're not SJWs, but because we both agree that it takes a village, if we have a virus that kills mainly elderly folks, we should protect the elderly. I think that's a given.
And there are people that can do that and they still with them. They just are they take all the precautions and everything. And we did that when my stepdad and mom and my half sister, they all got COVID. I was the only one that didn't get it for some reason. Maybe it's my blood type or something, or maybe because I wash my hands like a doctor. And my mom's mom, she stayed in her trailer that she lives on our property. She didn't come. She didn't, thank goodness. So we kept her separate from us, but she was able to still communicate with us, like just not far.
Okay.
And I
Uh,
cared for everybody too. And yeah.
so when the whole COVID crisis was ongoing, my grandmother stayed home for 2 years, from 2020 all the way to 20 to mid to just recently, actually in 2022. She did not leave the home because we know that if she gets COVID, she's dead. There's no ifs or buts about it. Like, she'll die. So we protected our grandmother. And anytime if one of us were going to visit the house, we make sure, like, okay, you didn't go out. Don't go out. You know, you if you did go out, you wore a mask. You made sure you washed your hands, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but if you're out in the open air and there's plenty of flow in nature, you don't need a mask.
I think we lost her. Hello?
Hello?
Hello, hello, hello. I think we lost connections.
Hello?
I think we lost connection. Hello? Heather,
hello,
we lost you.
Hello.
Got back connection. Hello, hello, hello. John Juan, the guy who says that civil war would be great. Yeah, this is a lesson for you. Hello, Heather, are you still there? Hold on. Are you there? Hello?
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 You broke off, but I think you're back.
Okay. Forgot. Where were we? Oh, yeah.
We were talking about masking up.
Yeah, you don't need to do that outside. But if it's indoors, maybe. But this also goes back to the inconsistency of, okay, you can wear a mask. Oh, don't wear a mask. I'll wear a mask.
That's a problem with consistency, though. That doesn't disprove the importance of masks. Hello?
Well, isn't life full of risks?
Yes, but we should also work to mitigate risks. Like when you get into a car,
when you overwork too much to mitigate it, it kind of becomes a bummer on everybody else. And yeah.
In the middle of a pandemic that has killed millions of people, I don't really see an issue with having some.
It didn't kill as many people as you think. As far as the country and per area,
no, around the world,
it killed
millions.
If it was annually.
If it was a typical flu, then how come we had such an influx in deaths?
Because there were some people that in hospitals that said, "Okay, we need some COVID money for the hospital." Oh, we'll just say they died of. That has happened. There have been people that have worked in these hospitals that said they have done this. That, and you got these shortages of people because they're saying that they're being told if you don't take the vaccine, we'll fire you. And a lot of times they have either said they'll quit or they made them fire them. So, and yet you need all these people.
You're saying COVID was not a threat to the elderly. We should have just
not to the elderly. Okay, for those with comorbidities and at risk, but not everyone else. Now, if it started killing kids and stuff, that's a bad thing.
So we should be selfish and not give a shit about those people. Let them die.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you can't.
So if you're not saying that, then you believe in some kind of procedures to take, some kind of protocol. You're not asking for much by wearing a mask. You're really not asking for much. That's like the bare minimum of what you could do, and it's not a big deal. It really isn't a big deal.
Well, what if you want to breathe easier?
I breathed just fine. I wore a mask every time I went out.
There are some people that have had, and actually my mom knows somebody that had to get doctor's exemption to not wear a mask because he was having breathing difficulties.
So then you believe in making exceptions for those people, but not making exceptions for helping the elderly or protecting people.
No, I'm not. The thing is, at what point can we? This is the problem of micromanaging people's lives.
I don't think we were really micromanaging that much, considering the fact how many people got COVID and how many, even in California, which had like all these COVID rules, and the Democrats were imposing all these procedures and all this stuff. How come California had such huge numbers? Like, we weren't really micromanaging that much.
Or the reason they had more numbers is because, but guess who had the least numbers? People in Florida.
Florida had one of the highest death rates in the entire country. What are you talking about?
I think you mean infection rates.
We had very high infection rates, yes, and also a very high amount of deaths in Florida.
Let me tell you something. You're gonna have to look into this harder. There's a lot that we're not being told about. No, I'm serious.
There were 75,000 deaths in Florida.
There's a lot of.
Jimmy, you're saying that nobody got COVID?
Okay, first of all, COVID does exist. I saw my family go through it. It's just it's being blown out of proportion than what
I know people who got COVID. I know somebody whose wife died from COVID. If you can prove to me that that's all a lie, then show me the evidence. Really. Why is everything in America a conspiracy? Why? Why is
it's not a conspiracy when there are people that are like, well, when you have a government that almost wanted to say that, you may need to get a vaccine in order to travel, and people were concerned about the side effects of it, and they said, still too bad, you need to get it anyway. And this was also a vaccine that was made in just 8 months. That is not long enough. So
all the people who got COVID, who had family who died from COVID, all these people, they were all liars.
First of all, you were putting words in my mouth. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is proper sanitation. Just and this is a problem that people are losing the bare basics of what it is to take care of yourself and other people, and just sanitation and all of that. And when you got a lot of people really worried because they are being told thankfully they turned it down except for those in healthcare, which I was concerned for my mom, but thankfully she got her exemption. Because I was worried for her. I was crying over that. Okay. Especially because the vaccines negatively affect women to where their cycles aren't normal anymore.
There were millions. How many billions of people all over the world got vaccinated?
How do we know that they lied in the polls?
Okay, I can't.
No, seriously, there are people that lie in polls.
We live in two different universes. I don't see this conversation going progressing in any other way. Like, we're just going to disagree because, like, if I tell you, like, hey, billions of people got the vax, there wasn't a whole lot of serious problems. There was something.
Well, now there are more deaths because people are finding that it's associated with the vaccines.
How many?
Certain ones. I'll tell you, my psychiatrist, my own psychiatrist, he was very healthy until he started getting GI problems, and it was after he had the Pfizer. And they said at the specialist in Charlotte that they believe it was the vaccine.
I agree that there have been side effects from the vaccine. Yes, I don't disagree with that. At the same time,
we can't even sue the companies responsible for it. That's wrong.
Gotcha. Didn't you say that there is a risk in everything?
Well, yeah, but at what point can we control every single thing to where it could encroach another person's life?
I know. I don't agree with this idea of like forcing everybody to get vaxxed. I don't. I think it's insane. Like, just force everybody to get vaxxed. Everybody should get a booster shot. I think that's kind of crazy. I think that's too much. But at the same time, there needed to be some kind of mitigating action, some kind of mitigating policy to deal with COVID. You may disagree with me on that. I don't really see.
Now, I will say the first couple of weeks, I was okay with it. But then I assumed okay, we're going back to business. And we didn't. And I'm like, I'm tired of this. I need to go back. Okay, I had essential job. I have an essential job, so I was allowed to go. But it sucked for a lot of people that were forced to stay at home, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I
A lot of
can't."
people are working from home, and they're actually preferring it.
Well, yeah, because they've had it being lackeys for corporations in
Yeah,
which they
so
are
there
wage
were some
slaves.
positives. There were some
But at
positives
the
that came
same
out as a
time,
result.
we're seeing but then there's a huge gap between that and the trades. And a lot of investment is not being made in trades like they used to. That and the HB1. There's a lot of compounding problems, and the pandemic amplified this. And it's accelerating with the Great Reset,
Sure.
logistics, and all of this. It's all connected, believe it or not. It really is, and it's scary.
I don't know about the Great Reset, but yes, I agree that COVID exacerbated a lot of problems that were already there. Yes, I agree with you there. But
And made it worse. It sped it
this
up.
is part of the problem when you have a virus that can kill people. That's the problem when you have pandemics and you have other consequences that come as a result of it.
And by the way, I have relatives that have taken the shot, but I don't judge them. What bothers me is
Forcing people to do it, right?
forcing people or saying that at one point in Canada, they thought about if you weren't vaccinated, you wouldn't go into a grocery store. And the grocery
Yes, I
store
disagree.
said
Yeah,
no.
I
They
disagree.
said no.
I completely disagree with that. I don't agree with forcing people to take a booster
Well,
and
yeah,
to take.
because at some point, push comes to shove, people don't want to be told what to
I never
do.
got. Hey, here's the thing. I never got vaxxed. I've never been vaxxed, and you know what? I think I got COVID once,
I probably
and
got it for all I know, but I just didn't get
I
sick.
I got
That's the
sick,
thing.
and I got sick, and I got a really bad sore throat for 2 weeks, and had a little bit of difficulty breathing in the beginning, but I isolated myself to my room, and I didn't really leave. So that was it. So
I
yeah,
was around everybody in this house for 2 weeks, and I never, okay, let's just say I probably didn't have symptoms, but I probably had it because I noticed there was one thing that was off in that time of the month, and I'm not going to say any further. And that's what I think I may have had it, but I just
sure.
didn't get sick
Okay,
because I was the one caring for everybody.
gotcha. Okay, is there anything else that you want to say? As I think we've covered a lot of things in this conversation.
People need to think harder right now than ever before. We are going to get into bad times, and I want people to be prepared. And
Okay.
we may, and I really hope it doesn't come to that, but I actually worry about everybody every day. I really do, to where I have to avoid thinking about it, but it's hard for me to not do. So, everybody, try your best to return to the land, grow your own food.
Let's just not kill the elderly while we're at it.
Yes, and care for the kids you have right now.
Okay.
Wait maybe 5 years and see what happens if things may get better or not. Think about what's best for your household, grandchildren, all that, because this is not going to be just for blue and red states. This is going to happen to everybody. Also,
Okay.
look into the term hypernormalization because this is what is going on. It's same sides of the Hegelian dialectic, and when you get past politics, you see right through the crap and you say they're all liars.
Gotcha.
Most of them are.
All right. I appreciate the conversation. I enjoyed it, and I hope you have a good weekend. Okay.
Okay, good. I hope we get rain.
You'll be. Me too. Absolutely. All right.
Aren't we in a nation? Of course, there's a drought in some places, but I just hope it
Yes,
doesn't
there
get
is.
here. Okay, bye.
All right. Bye bye. Oh, okay. Anybody else want to come on and talk? We're doing call-ins, everybody. This is 90. I can't say the name of my show. 95.5 Kiss FM, where we play rock and roll music from the early 2000s and the late 1990s, the best era of rock. Who wants to come on and talk? be my guest, let me know. I'll put the link in the chat. This is, I got to do the radio voice better. This is 95.5 KISS FM, your source for the best music of the late 90s and early 2000s. And I have to do like an echo, like KISS FM, FM, KISS, 95.5 KISS.